Good evening and welcome to Movers and Makers Virtual Chat Series, episode number 10, brought to you by Low-Key Arts here in Hot Springs National Park, Arkansas, and made possible with the generous support of the Gail Pratt Fraser Trust. I am your host, Sonny K, Executive Director of Low-Key Arts. My guests this evening are two incredibly prolific and creative people who I've had the pleasure of knowing, in one case, for quite a long time, and very, very proud to call them friends. Their resumes certainly could stretch on for a long time and fill half this program, so I won't bother with that. And they probably don't need any introduction for our viewers anyway. Gives me great pleasure to introduce Chris Shary and Lori Herbst to the program. Welcome, both of you, to Movers and Makers. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
How are you guys?
We are fine.
We're doing excellent. Thank you.
It's hot. It's hot. It's really, really hot here in Stockton.
It's really hot. It's really hot. I'm feeling it myself right now. I'm sure I probably look like I'm feeling it. Sweltering here.
Oh man, we made the mistake before doing this. We started watching Loki, and I'm feeling so in honor of Low-Key Arts. We started watching it, and man, I swear, I started feeling like I was melting into the chair. It's not smart. So but luckily, we both have our coffee here, so we should be fine.
Right, Breakfast of Champions.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I'm so glad to have the chance to talk to you both. And there's certainly, as we were just saying before we came on the air, there's so much we could talk about. There's no shortage of mutual friends and experiences stretching back quite a long time. But we can talk about some of that stuff, of course, as it comes up. But I'd love to really just kind of jump into your backgrounds as artists, your careers, your formative years, so to speak, and how you met each other, and where you find your creativity and that kind of thing. So without really knowing the most appropriate place to start, I guess I'm going to start with you, Chris, because I know I've known you for I was trying to do the math on it. I think it's just about 3 decades.
Yeah, I think it's a little over 3 decades. For me, actually, when we met, was really when my art career was really starting to take off, because I had just graduated from high school, and I moved to Denver from living in England. And when I hit Denver, I was only going to be there really, really briefly. So I didn't have any intention of I was done with high school, but I wasn't really sure where I was going, with career or anything. Mm-hmm. So I didn't apply for colleges or anything. And so essentially I took a year off. And then, the year after that, 89, I applied for Colorado State University. I knew they had a good art program. And my roommate said, well, hey, man, if you're going to apply, you probably need to do it soon. So I was like, well, when's the application due? And he said, well, by the end of the week. So I applied to one place, got in, and I was like, all right, that's fine. I'm going to CSU. So I went there. I majored in fine arts, got my bachelor's degree, and then I got finished and went to Metro State and got my teaching credential. And then from there, started teaching middle school art. And that's my plan all along was be an art teacher and then do art on the side, mm-hmm. And, which I've been doing since then. So that was 96 was my first job teaching, and I've been doing it ever since. And that's really where my formal training came from. I formally trained at Colorado State University and then got my teaching credential through Metro State. And then Lori and I met in 1998, summer of 98.
Sounds so long ago to say that.
Yeah, it's a long time ago. Yeah.
We met in the 1900s.
Turn of the century. I met this sweet young filly. But anyway, and then for you, that's not that wasn't what you were going into.
No, I was in my family's business, wastewater remediation, and that's in Colorado, and that brought Chris and I out to the Central Valley to do some wastewater remediation, and then 9/11 happened and everything kind of dried up, so to speak, for wastewater. So, and we were having our son at that time anyway. So I was at home, and his parents bought me a sewing machine. And so I was just kind of keeping busy because I like to keep busy. And I started sewing, and then he started working for the drama department. And so I started making costumes, and it just kind of went from there.
Okay, I was wondering where that costuming connection came in, and that's
Right.
That's how. Okay, so
Yeah.
let me back up just a little bit. Chris, you mentioned, so you didn't really fall accidentally into teaching. You set out to be a teacher.
Yeah, when I graduated from high school, I knew I wanted to do art, but I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do with it. And the winter after I graduated, I went back to England, and I met with my my former art teacher, Mr. Cannell. And I kind of picked his brain about like how is it being like a high school art teacher for you, and he loved it. And the one thing that he had said that really kind of like hit, like you just graduated from high school and you're lazy, and he was like, yeah, and you get the summers off. I was like, rad, the summers off. And it dawned on me that that's like when all bands tour and stuff. So I was like, well, that sounds pretty good. So that means like I can go see all these bands, and I could go out on a school night, and that'd be cool. But I also really liked the idea of working with kids. Even in high school, like I knew like working with kids would be kind of cool. So even though I did go to Colorado State as a fine arts major, I knew that I was planning on teaching with that. I just wanted to get a really good art foundation. So I figured if I was going to be teaching art, I'd probably have to know a little bit about everything. I'd need to do, because at the time, most art classes in high school would offer pottery, and they'd offer three-dimensional stuff, and they'd maybe offer, like a complete, painting class, or maybe a drawing class, or photography. So I learned all of that stuff, and I really wanted to be really very proficient in everything, instead of just kind of like feeling like I kind of had an idea about, everything. So I definitely knew like teaching was going to be in the cards for me. And each summer while I was in college, I was doing summer day camps, working with kids. Wow. So like I knew that I enjoyed being around them, and I knew that that's what I wanted to do. So yeah, I knew for a really, really long time. And I knew that I really didn't want to do my artwork as my career. I wanted that to be pick and choose. So like I could do kind of whatever I wanted to do. And I didn't have to feel like, it was just a job for me. Right. But like I could pursue bands and say, hey, I'd really like to do stuff for this band or that band, instead of, like, oh, here's an assignment and I've got to do this thing for, and there wouldn't be much passion behind that.
Well, I think that's a very, astute kind of mature observation for a young person to make.
Who's living with their parents. Like that was the whole thing. Like I was living with my mom and dad, so it was easy for me to go, I don't want to do that. Like I'm living in my parents' house.
I guess that
you're at clown college.
Yeah. So and I was really seriously like clown college was very much an option for me too. And
wow. How did I not know this about you?
I don't know. I mean, she likes it. She thinks it's funny. Well, and it should be, right? Like clowns are supposed to be funny. Yeah. So that was always in the back of my mind. Like, I could do that because like I was, as you know, I was fairly acrobatic and I'm very physical and obviously I like loud colors. So, I mean, there was a lot of appeal, the idea of actually becoming a clown. And I really very seriously considered that as well. Because also that's working with kids. And, it was something that I felt I was probably well suited for. I think I had the right temperament for it. And, and I even went and, took a look at one of the clown colleges in Florida. I mean, this is no joke. I mean, like I legitimately did this and it didn't pan out, but, I've always had a soft spot for clowns. So
what would your ambition, sorry to interrupt you. What would your ambition have been to join a circus or traveling kind of thing?
Oh yeah, for real. Yeah. Like, I mean, I would have loved to have joined up, with Ringling Brothers and just like, that would be like what I did. Cause I figured you'd be around really interesting people, and the thing I like too is that circus has brought, people from all over the world were in a traveling troupe.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd have people from, I mean, literally all around the globe that you would become really close with, and you'd pick up other traits. Because I knew that a lot of the clowns also worked and like help, maybe train animals or whatever. And of course now, there's a different take on like circuses and clowns and all that. But at the time, like it seemed like it was really very interesting, like type work. So yeah, that was for real a very cool option.
Wow. One thing that struck me about you, has always struck me about you from even when we were kids, and you were just doing things for local bands and that kind of thing, making art and that kind of thing. We'll get into how that all started soon, but I've always been struck by your what's the word? You are incredibly prolific. You are maybe one of the most productive people I think I've ever actually known. And I wonder where your work ethic comes from, because it's all down to the descendants, I guess.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I grew up, as you know, my dad was in the Air Force, and it's not that we were, really, we weren't a really military family, but we were very like regimented and very much responsibilities and time management was always very important to my dad in particular. And not that he was like a taskmaster or anything, but I feel like I definitely picked up a lot of like his work ethic and his respect for deadlines and things. I think really comes from my dad. And I always felt like, there was a lot of this time that you have throughout your day. And, I could be just kind of like, wasting time, or I could be, like doing something. And the more I realized that as an artist, I could be doing things for bands, and I could do it for dozens of bands. While if you were in fact in a band, you've just got the one that you're working on. Well, I can be working with a bunch. So I figured, well, I'll work for as many as I can. And, for me, it was almost like Pokemon. It was like, well, I'm working with these guys, and now I want to work with these guys, and now I want to work. And I'm trying to work with everybody. So I think for me, that was really a big motivating factor, is seeing T-shirts out in the wild that I did. Like, it gets you stoked, because then you're like, I want to see more of that. So, I've always been highly motivated, and I have a lot of like internal goals that I'm constantly working towards. And like when Lori and I met, she was exactly the same way. I mean, she would stay up almost around the clock, having to go and check up on some of the wastewater equipment that her and her family was doing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They were doing, calls all the time, and they were working for so many people and places. And she had patents out in her name, and her family's company had a lot of patented technology. And so I saw that in her also. And while it wasn't art that she was doing when we first met, it was really attractive to me, because I was like, her whole family is about like doing and being productive and creativity, even though they were applying it towards science. It was really exciting to me. So I think once we met, I mean, it kind of like skyrocketed, like I became even more disciplined and a little bit more capable too of like reaching out and doing things just from getting examples from her and her family.
Well, that kind of dovetails nicely then with beginning to talk about Lori's process and the kind of work that you've been doing the last few years, at least that I'm aware of, Lori. Perhaps a decade or so. I'm not sure.
Yeah, around there.
And these are works in vinyl that are, frankly, they seem very technical and very process oriented. So to understand that your background's in something scientific makes a lot of sense.
It's all putting puzzles together. That's what it comes down to. But yeah, my dad is a scientist, and my mom, she taught me how to sew and all that kind of thing. And they were always busy too. And that's just kind of, I don't know, kind of how we function.
Well, and the other thing I think that is really cool about Lori's family in particular is that, while they're scientists, they're approaching science very much from like a punk rock DIY sort of thing. Right. And like Lori was always talking about wanting to do like their own business called the Little Red Hen Company, where like you just kind of do it yourself because like nobody else is going to, know how to do it or do it right. And so they were doing exactly the same sort of thing, but completely the other end of the spectrum. And like, I saw that and immediately like put that together and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. They're a really great family. So I think like philosophically where we were coming from was really very much the same, even though what we were doing initially was very, very different.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And how did you two meet?
Go ahead.
We met at a bar.
Hollywood Legends. I don't know if you remember that place.
I remember the name. Yeah, I do. Wow.
It was an awful, awful, awful dance club. It was on the outskirts of Littleton, wasn't it?
I think not. Yeah, I don't know. It was
Denver. Okay.
Awful, yeah. Awful. So they had an 80s themed dance night.
Of course.
Yeah, and he was wearing parachute pants, and I was like, all right, this obviously, I like loud.
Well, and Sonny, obviously you know how much I enjoy dancing. So like, going on out, we met, and also, I mean, if people don't know, I'm not a drinker and I never have been. So the fact that we met at a bar is laughable. It's like such a cheesy story. Yeah, we met at a bar, and we did. But, we were out dancing and we had mutual friends that we had kind of come together. Our friend groups had come together and we met and hit it off really, really well. And then I went off on the Warped Tour and then I came back from the Warped Tour and, Lori had been asking about me. And things kind of came together really quickly after that. Really.
And then you kept it on theme by marrying in Vegas.
Yeah, I know. Like our whole like story about like how we met and like what we did and like where we. Yeah, so we got married in Vegas. You tell about that.
Well, we decided we were just going to get married in Vegas and have a party later, just because it just seemed like more fun than spending a lot of money and fighting with everybody about what's going to happen when and all that stuff. So we went. And I can't remember if we had in mind somewhere where we were going to go.
No,
we went down to the courthouse to buy the license, and they were super excited because we had the exact change.
$35, like $35.
And they were so excited they didn't have to make us any change. And so we were like, okay, well, are we done? Are we married now? And they went, no, you actually have to go and get it officiated somewhere. So we drove out to the
Little White Chapel of Love.
Yeah, it was a drive-through. And
we went there. Sonny, you took me there.
And the guy was totally drunk, and he was leaning on the side of the car.
Because we were married in the car.
Yeah,
like we weren't just in Vegas. We were in the car.
This is unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun.
And it sounds so ridiculous too, because like anybody that says, oh yeah, me and my wife, like met at a bar and got married in Vegas, like
in a car.
Part of that story is we got divorced in a year.
Later.
Yeah. Oh wow, 2 weeks. Yeah, I was giving it a year. But yeah, like usually that's kind of like the punchline then, and like it's 20 some odd years later, and like
incredible.
Everything's good.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about Chris. I mean, you are so your name is synonymous with so many groups, and a question that I get asked by young people and frequently am asked by young people about an art career in the music business. The number one question is how do you start? Is how do you what's the jump off? And my answer for them is to find a band you love and if you don't know them, don't let that stop you. Just start making art. And it's in this day and age, it's easy to get people's attention via social media or anything, and anyway, what's your take on that?
My take on it is like, do your work, you have to do your work. I think when people are asking that question, already you're coming at it from completely the wrong, point of view, as far as I'm concerned. Like if I'm going, I want to be this, No, you just do it.
You're
And
looking for permission.
time will tell whether or not you were successful with it or not. And for me, as you well know, I did artwork for bands that I really liked, and so when you guys were playing with Savalas, I mean, I always tell people Savalas, #2 band ever to come out of Colorado, like Fluid and there's Savalas. So for
you, I
you,
thought you were going to say Firefall.
well, I don't know about that. I mean, they had their moments for sure. But for me, I just was like, I love you guys. You're great people and whatever. And like, I was just happy to be doing stuff where I was appreciated, and there was definitely a mutual like respect that we had with each other. And, I was doing it for the reason that I just really wanted to support the music. Cause I wasn't really planning on, like being serious with being in a band, but just doing the artwork. I didn't expect anything was going to happen overnight. And certainly, if you'd have asked me 30 years back if I ever thought I'd be in the position I am now, absolutely not. It was just, oh, I'm doing this here and now, and this is fun for me. And then as, time progresses, you kind of like realize that if you've stuck with it, you've got all this body of work that's built up over time. And the same thing is true for Lori. I mean, she started out with just some humble pieces that she gave away. And the next thing you know, it kind of blossoms into something. But what are the reasons you're doing it? And for me, it was never about because I wanted that to be my career. I wanted to be a teacher. And this was something that I was doing on the side. So, but you gotta stick with it. I've seen within the past, like say 5 years, a lot of people that have built a name rather quickly for themselves in like social media. You'll see like, oh, here's somebody that kind of comes up and then they're gone. They kind of like burn out really, really quickly. Or,
why is that? What is that symptomatic of? Are you talking about designers or artists?
Yeah. I don't know. I really don't know. At the risk of sounding snooty, I don't know that I've ever asked them. But there have been, people that I've kind of seen.
I wonder. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, sorry.
I wonder if it's got anything to do with this sort of immediate gratification of social media.
Could be.
And that high being more and more difficult to maintain, I guess, if it's something that you're motivated by.
Well, I think sometimes people are really short-sighted too. I think a lot of people, they have like an immediate goal that they want to get to, and then fine, I got there, and then that's it. But me, like, I'm in this for the long haul. Like, I mean, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not about like, oh, well, I did artwork for Descendants. Now I'm done. It's like, okay, now I've done stuff for them. I want to do this. And for me, I'm not about what I have done. I'm about where I'm going and what I'm planning on doing next. Because like all that other stuff's great, but that's in the past. Like I'm still paving the way. And for anybody who's getting started, do your work. I mean, do it every day, practice what you do. And, as you well know, you can't just sit in your basement and expect that people are going to come to you. Right. You have to be putting it out there. And, that's one of the things that Lori and I both, as you probably know, really work at is sorry, dogs.
But yeah,
But
you guys both have very serious, very consistent social media presences, and clearly are producing work constantly, right? I mean, on a daily basis.
About that, I'm
here. I'll get
okay.
it.
Okay,
you go.
Yeah, that's one of the things when when his kids in his art classes are wondering how to move forward. That's what we do every day. We're posting things, we're contacting people, we go to shows, we go to like designer con conventions, anything that is going to get you out there, because you can be the best artist in the world in the basement. Nobody cares.
Well, and the other thing, is that people nowadays, they want to believe in who you are. They're not necessarily interested in just the end product, but for who was responsible for this. So you have to, you know, put yourself out there. That, like it or not, that's part of the whole thing. And you know, it got really irritating to me when I heard, you know, like musicians or like athletes going, oh, well, I didn't ask to be a role model or whatever, but you're doing something really well and people want the entire package. So you signed up for that. So shut up and get your work done, and don't just assume that people aren't paying attention to that, because that's important. I mean, like, I could buy a painting from anyone. So why am I going to buy it from you? You know, what is there about what you offer or about who you are? Because truthfully, people are wanting to invest in what you've done. So you've got to show people, who are you? And if you're a turd, you're going to have a really, really short career, because like it, you know, whatever. But if you're somebody that people want to work with, there's going to be longevity. And I think, you know, I can safely say that the both of us have really good reputations for the people that we've worked with. People want to work with us, you know, because, well, we're kind of fun to be around.
I have no doubt about that.
Yeah, right.
Lori, I remember you doing sort of a mass production. You have done mass production of your work from time to time, right? But most of the pieces, I think, are sort of kind of, I guess, what you would describe as a one-off or unique individual thing, often commissions, if I'm not.
That's what I prefer, is just doing, you know, one-off, or maybe a couple, you know, different. But each time I do it, it's something different anyway. So if you know, I hand cut everything, so nothing's exactly the same. Right. Mass producing, you know, sometimes I'll get really excited and get a bunch of stuff done, but most of the time I like to just do one thing and then move on.
To me,
I don't like to do the same thing over and over again. I don't like to drive the same way over and over again. I got to take a different route every time.
I couldn't agree more. And I've when I find myself having to redo work that's lost for one reason or another, or that kind of thing, like there's something very counterproductive to me about doing anything twice.
Definitely.
Even if it's better the second time, as it often is. So I imagine with the nature of your work, it must. My presumption is that it must feel very tedious to be on the 49th copy of one of your things.
Yeah. And I know, you know, there's so many people that make like bags and things, and they mass produce them, and they do such a beautiful job. And that's really, I'm not good at that. It's just not my thing. So I'm delighted for them to do what they're really good at, and then I can kind of focus on doing individual things, just because I tire of that.
How do you choose your subject matter?
Well, when I started, I kind of did what I wanted. Now I generally do gallery shows. So I do whatever the theme is for the gallery show, and I do commissions. So, you know, whatever somebody is looking for. A lot. I just talked to a lovely lady who's getting married, and she's letting me do whatever I want, which is always my delight. You know, she said, well, we really like Tim Burton stuff, but whatever you want to do beyond that is you do your thing. And I tend to, you know, really flourish when I'm allowed to kind of be creative. But most of the time I'm doing something toward a show or a commission or something like that. So I'm not doing a lot of just whatever I want to create at this point.
Are your pieces limited size-wise by your tools, by the equipment that you use, or could they?
No. I started out with the little home sewing machine, which was it was a Bernina. It was a great machine. Anybody who's sewing out there, oh yeah, Bernina. And then I got an industrial machine. And then I got a bigger industrial machine. So it just has, now I work with a machine that has an 18-inch throat. So it's absolutely huge. And I'm going to be working on one in November that's going to be 7 feet tall. So yeah, I'm limited by, you know, whether or not I can get fabric big enough to work with, but that's about it.
And so you buy vinyl and rolls or something like that? Yeah.
Lots of vinyl.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have loads of vinyl. And I was working up here at, just in the house for a long time, and we suddenly realized that we had a basement that we had just had full of boxes. So we pulled all the boxes out of it, and I moved into the basement. And now we're much happier because it's not taking over the entire house.
Well, it's cool too, because like we have like, it's a quarter basement, but then we have a crawl space, and in the crawl space, her parents and her built these shelving systems that go into the area that's essentially in between the dirt and then the house. So that crawl space area, she's got all these tubes of vinyl rolls.
Oh, wow.
And
you're like a big double wide coffin that just goes back there.
You have your own vinyl cellar.
It's pretty incredible, actually. And it's a great use of space. And then it means that, like, the living room area is relatively free of that, because before it used to just be, everything was just out. Like my stuff was out and Lori's stuff was out. And, after a while, you can't work on things the same way if you need to put everything away when you're done and then get it out. And I think because of the basement studio, it's meant that you're way more productive, because, she can, if she's not sleeping well, she can get up in the middle of the night, go downstairs, or if she has a deadline on a show, this is very common to work straight through the night.
Wow.
And then at like 6 a.m, I wake up and we go, all right, let's load it into the van. And then we drive it down to LA for an opening that night.
Wow.
Like this happens.
But I was really fortunate because my parents know how to, they're good. They can plumb and do electric and, so they'll help me build whatever I need to work down there. So that's been really, really nice.
Yeah, that's pretty helpful.
That
kind of money. I mean, like
your own private engineering firm.
Yeah, they're pretty handy to have around
at your disposal. Yeah, that's fantastic. Chris, you've the last few, I want to say maybe 5 or so, 6, 7 years, you've been developing a series, I guess if you want to call it that, of paintings that seem to me to have kind of evolved out of your quote unquote original style of Sharpie drawing and that kind of thing. The thing I think that most people are maybe familiar with, the thing that you seem like you've been doing the longest. And I'm curious to know what the impulse was for that. And also, I find it curious because as somebody who has such an innate talent for drawing and just looking at something and reproducing it on paper, which is I'm very envious of, you utilize computers for these paintings, it seems like, in a very unexpected way. At least for me, to see your process and methods evolve over these decades, and that kind of popped up out of nowhere. At least for me, it seemed that way. I'm sure.
No, it but yeah, it definitely came up.
I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So, as you said, I mean, like what I think a lot of people, might initially know me for is more of the Sharpie stuff. Mm-hmm. And I've been doing that for a while. And, with the Sharpies, it's all about line and value. I mean, that's really what it is, because I only use one Sharpie and, all of the, cross-hatching or whatever to create the value. That's what it's really all about. So it's all about line and value. And obviously, I'm a very colorful person. So I started going, well, I really miss like shape and color. So I've been just doing value and line and, really, really missed color and shape. So it was Glenn Danzig's birthday. And Lori always like looks into like what is today. So like she'll post something that's, maybe related to, it's like National Cheesecake Day, and she'll post something about that. So she goes, hey, it's Glenn Danzig's birthday today. And I was like, oh, he's so funny looking. So I drew like a little, sketch of him that was very different than what I normally do. It was just, with a Sharpie, but just on like a little Post-it. And, it was done to kind of like look more like, I don't know, like a Rankin and Bass sort of like design for what Glenn Danzig would look like if he was like, on Santa Claus is Coming to Town.
Right.
So I drew it and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I'd like it with color though. And so I was like, well, how would I do that? Well, I guess I draw the shapes and then I would fill them with color on Photoshop, and then I would layer them in Photoshop. So in the end, I don't have like a physical anything, but I've drawn all of these pieces that I then scanned and colored. And then I was creating something that was all about color and shape now. Because in those, I try to avoid any line work at all. I try and, like have, like there's no line that distinguishes where there's like hair and skin. It's the two colors are against each other and the shapes that they form that makes that distinction. So I was like, whoa, that was kind of fun. So that first day for Glenn Danzig's birthday, I think I did like 3 or 4 of them. And I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. And then I just got carried away. And, I've probably done maybe 500 of them at this point. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
There's a ridiculous amount. And, for me, it kind of became like, I got to a certain point where I was like, all right, but are people looking at Sharpie drawings and they're going, hey, I recognize that picture that it's from, and that's what they're responding to. And they're going, oh, I love Bob Marley because I've seen this picture of Bob Marley. So what I wanted to do instead was I wanted to make everything with a certain set of rules that they're all facing front and that they try and hit all 4 sides of a square. So I'm doing it, they're all squared. And that it's not based on any photo, but it's a conglomeration of the features of who this person is. So when you look at it, if you go, oh, that's Cyndi Lauper, you're recognizing the features that make up Cyndi Lauper and not because, oh, I know what the cover to Time After Time looks like.
Right.
So for me, that was what the challenge really was, is like, can I still make people know who this is? Even somebody who's relatively normal looking. Cyndi Lauper, of course, like really extreme example, but could I do somebody who's like really common looking? Al Burrill from SSD. He's kind of a normal looking guy, more or less. And, I was like, well, how do I make Al look like Al, but with these rules that I've created? And then I started kind of getting just into like the challenge of like, how do I do that? And, it has come from kind of nowhere, but it was really to satisfy that other side of me that really wanted shape, color, and everything. Because the Sharpie drawings were completely without color, and I really felt I was missing it. So I essentially invented a way of creating portraits that are never based on like any one thing, but hopefully they look like the subject. That's
being familiar with a lot of your work, I think it's some of the most effective portraiture that you've ever done. There's something really I wouldn't even know how to describe it well quickly here, but there's something about them that really transcends. I see what you're saying. The thing about not being any one photograph and being distracted by that template in your mind, so to speak. Man, this is so interesting to me. How many? So for the average one of those paintings, how many reference photos would you say you look at?
It's hard to say, because if it's somebody that I know well, I don't need to use many. Because I study faces all the time. I mean, I'm obsessed with like the human face and like how it works and all that kind of stuff. So if it's somebody that I know really well, a couple, because I already have a pretty good idea about how they look or whatever. But oftentimes what I'll do is I'll start looking through and finding a bunch where like they're looking as straight on in the camera as possible. So I'm looking at like interviews and stuff, or like somebody who is just using like a podcast sort of thing. They're very oftentimes very straight on. Wow. So I can kind of see that and then see how do the features move and what do they really look like. So usually I'll start going through and looking at a bunch of images before I start committing anything to paper. Maybe a dozen or so. And I may have, when I'm working on it on my laptop, I might have, like 5 or 6 different images. So like I can compare the eye shape. And for me, I love it when there's like a band photo and it's all relatively because then you can look and you can go, okay, his ears are much bigger than his ears. And I can see that. So maybe that's an area that needs to be emphasized a little bit more. And I would say that once I've got something, the actual like sketching it out and getting something that I'm happy with can happen really quickly. You know, it could be maybe 5 minutes. And then I have to then ink everything, scan it, and color it. So, you know, each one probably from start to finish. I mean, what would you guess? Like an hour, 2 hours, maybe?
Yeah, not long.
Not all that long, really. And then it's just a digital image initially. And then, you know, I get people saying, oh, well, could you do a painting of that? And then what I'll do is I'll print it out to scale and then transfer it onto a canvas and then paint it. And that's really where it becomes tricky, because for all of those, they're all really hard edges. So I have to create hard edges without, you know, like tape. So there's a lot of artists who, you know, like will work on very geometric pieces where they use a lot of painter's tape, and I don't. So everything is about me getting, and the funny thing is that I have really, really, really shaky hands, except when it comes to doing my artwork. They get really, you know, very steady and stable. But my eyesight is so shot now that I'll have my glasses off and I'm not kidding, like maybe 2 inches from whatever I'm doing. And with those paintings, I coat them in 3 or 4 coats of paint so that it's highly saturated. And from a distance, it looks like it's a computer printout.
Right.
I want it to look like it's as perfect as possible, but a human did it without the aid of tape.
Yeah, that's incredible. For me, the giveaway is that they're not, I don't know, it's not a giveaway, but I always look for your signature, because the signature for me is the most human feeling part. Not the most human feeling. I take that back. It's the most imperfect part of it. Yeah. And that's sort of the giveaway for me, whether it's, you know, something's digital or not. But it doesn't surprise me to hear that that's what you've been striving for with it, because that's the way they feel.
And another really like worth mentioning thing is something that I read about Jerry Dammers from the Specials. And so I don't know if you know this or not, but Jerry did all of the artwork for Two Tone. So like all of that stuff Jerry did. So, you know, like all the ska guy and everything, all of that.
You know the guy's name?
What's that?
Do you know the guy? Do you know that character's name?
Yeah, it's Jasko.
Walt Jabsko.
Jabsko, there you go. Right. Which is of course Bunny Wailer. Like, you know, that image is actually Bunny Wailer. But anyway,
Peter Tosh.
Oh, it's Peter Tosh. Yeah. Okay, there you go. Well, I'm in they were in the same band at the same time. Like they're all, it's like Peter Tosh, Bunny Wailer, and Bob Marley. They're all part of the same band. So they're all 3 in the original picture. Anyway, so I read this thing about Jerry Dammers, and he said all of the original two-tone stuff, all of the checkerboards that they used, he did them by hand.
Are you? That's amazing.
And he always made them imperfect, and he allowed for the imperfection to stay. Wow. Because his thought was that's what makes it human, and that's what makes it, you know, authentic or whatever. And like that really had like a big impact on me. And like when I read that, I was like, yes, if you're doing the checkerboard, you do it by hand. I've even done, you know, like things for Descendants where it's a repeating pattern that I've drawn the entire thing by hand.
Wow.
You know, because for me, there is something that your brain automatically responds to when it has been created by a human. And so for all of those pieces that I do, I draw all of those by hand and then color them in Photoshop, but I allow for them to be imperfect. They're supposed to be. You know, and it goes back to Jerry Dammers.
His version of imperfect, which is not very imperfect. It's amazing to watch you work. You're very good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you have any rules about how often you'll do a painting?
In like, how do you mean?
Well, let's say that you created one, you post it on social media, someone buys it right away, and then somebody else sees it and wants it and wants to commission you to do the same thing twice.
Yeah, I mean, I've done that. I mean, yeah, I don't do it very often. And, you know, honestly, with that stuff, I don't care because I don't make prints. So like I have people asking me frequently about that, and like I don't make prints. I don't intend on making prints, but what you'll get is something from me. So just like Lori was saying, with if she's ever done something where she's done multiples of whatever, they're all slightly different. There's idiosyncrasies that exist in all of them. And the same is true for me. So even if I were doing, somebody said, oh, great, Greg Graffin, I love that piece that you did. Can you make another one for me? Then I can, and I will, but it's going to look a little bit different. In fact, sometimes I'll do, and Lori's done this before too, we'll be working on 2 of the exact same pieces. So I've got the colors mixed up, and I'm painting one, that dries, and then I start working on the other one.
Wow, that's a real assembly line. That's why.
Yeah, but they do ultimately look a little bit different. And for me, I have no problem with that, because, you know, every single one was not only done by hand, but it was created by me. That image doesn't exist anywhere in the world until I go, these are the ways that I like these shapes to, you know, like work and live. So I don't ever have any problem with that, you know, and I've had plenty of time to think about like, oh, is that ethical or what? And I just go, I don't care. Like this didn't exist before me. And like with Lori's pieces, you know, while she's doing stuff that's, you know, oftentimes referenced from a photograph, the way that she creates the images is completely different than how I would. So like, even though there's a basis on a photograph, how she's choosing, you know, like sections to highlight or to emphasize, I don't do that. And I'll watch her do her work and go, I don't know. And so like, I always avoid saying, oh, you should do this or whatever, because that's me trying to imply my process on her. And she does things very differently, which I really like. It's pretty amazing. So in that regard, her pieces, until she's done them, there's nothing that's close to that. And you can go, oh, but that's from a photograph that so-and-so did. Right. It doesn't look like that photograph anymore. It's completely its own entity. So, you know, like, I don't know. I mean, I think that's pretty incredible.
Lori, I wonder, have you run into any kind of complications to do with copyright or anything like that from any of your work?
Not so far.
That's great.
Fingers crossed, you know, hopefully I don't, like I said, I don't, you know, mass produce anything unless it's something, you know, that I've come up with on my own or I'm doing for someone. So it's, you know, it's not interfering with anybody's right to produce things and sell them. Like they're not, most people who are buying my stuff are not buying it because they just wanted a print of that and it looks too close, you know. So, you know, we'll see. But so far it hasn't been a problem. And I always, you know, do my very best to find out who took the original photo and give them credit and all that stuff. So yeah, we'll see.
Well, and a lot of times too, I mean, you know, like Lori will then sometimes make 2 pieces and then go, okay, well, the original photographer was Ed Culver. Ed, this one's for you.
Oh, wow, cool.
Which is pretty amazing, because
like, remarkable.
People are like, are you kidding me? Like, how long did it take you to do this? And it might have taken her 40 hours to do a piece. And she's just like, nah, you can have it.
Wow. Ed Culver in particular, that photo of the kid flying over the crowd.
Ed has that piece.
That must have just he rendered him speechless. I mean, what do you even say?
He was kind of. Well, yeah.
It kind of rendered me speechless too. I don't know how I did that. It turned out really good. I was impressed, because it's more impressionistic than I usually work, and I really enjoyed that. It kind of gave me a different jumping off point for a lot of different things that I've done that is a different style than I used before.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
No, and it was pretty great, because like, you know, Ed was like, well, come to my house and, you know, I'll give you a tour and stuff. And like, wow, he was so blown away by just like Lori going here. And he was like, well, let me see what I got to give you. And we were like, we're not asking for anything. You know, he gave us, you know, some stuff, but that's not what it was about, like it was about, no, we'd like you to have this. And like both of us do that frequently. I mean, you've got some of my drawings that I've done for bands or whatever. I'm like, you can have it. I don't care, whatever.
Well, that kind of that sort of brings me to my next question, which was that you Chrissy, you've worked with so many groups, living and deceased. I guess you could say there's so many. I mean, there's so many classic artists who were before our time who you've had the pleasure, I would assume, or maybe not. Maybe it wasn't pleasure. You've had the opportunity to do work for them in one capacity or another over the years. And I wonder if there's anybody, if you have a sort of a dream list or
yeah, I do. It's not a very big one anymore. It really isn't. But and it's kind of a wildly varied one. So like They Might Be Giants are on there. They Might Be Giants, Madness, the Go-Go's. Obviously doing something for the Sex Pistols or the Clash would be pretty incredible too. And that's about it. That's really about it. Because pretty much everybody else that I've really, really wanted to do stuff with, I have. Even people that I didn't realize I wanted to work with, have sometimes reached out and gone, hey, could we use this? And I'm like, what, are you kidding me? Like, you're asking me? Like, that's weird. So yeah, my list is really pretty small these days. And obviously there's some bands that I just loved working with so much that I'd like to continue to. I mean, if I can do anything else for the Damned, I will. I mean, like, they're one of my all-time favorite bands, and I would love to continue doing stuff for them. But really, I mean, I try and have it so that any of the work relationships that I've had are positive, so that, there is the opportunity to continue to work for them, if at all possible. But like the 15-year-old me would definitely not believe like where the 50-year-old me has like, for real, definitely.
What's the most surreal commission you've ever done? What's the one you have the hardest time wrapping your head around?
Well, I've done one. It hasn't gotten used yet, but the Beatles.
Oh wow. Okay.
So I mean, honestly, you really can't get a whole lot bigger than that. Yeah. And that kind of a funny story. So did you know Bill Bartell from White Flag very well?
No.
Okay. Bill's a very interesting guy, or was a very interesting guy. Very much unlike anybody you'd ever want to meet. Just very, very unusual. But Bill had a really great way of kind of like inserting himself into anybody's world. And if there was something he wanted, he made that happen. So he was working with some people in Italy to put out a split single. I believe it was going to be the Tater Tots, which was his like quasi cover band of like Yoko Ono stuff. And then the Beatles. And there was an old Beatles song, Cry for a Shadow, that was recorded when they were in Germany. And I think Pete Best is on drums on that one. And so it's this unreleased song that some Italian label had rights to be able to do. And so he was putting together the single, and he was like, hey, would you be interested in doing this cover? And Bill notoriously would get a hold of me and go, hey, would you be interested in doing this? There was never anything in it for me. I mean, I would be lucky if I got a record, like, for real. So I was like, oh my gosh, he's asking me about something again. Like, I can't stand this. So he was like, well, it's a band that, like, it'd probably be a pretty good thing. It's like, the credibility alone would be pretty good. I was like, what are you asking me to do anything? Well, for the Beatles. And I went,
credibility.
And he would have you make 50 bazillion changes on everything.
Oh, wow.
He was so difficult to work with. I'd look at it and go, oh my God, it's Bill. I don't have 4 hours. And yet I did anyway. And I never like turned stuff down. I always did it. So that was definitely like the weirdest. And then Bill passed and the project kind of stalled out. And actually it's good that we're talking about this, because like I know who to contact to figure out whether or not that can get resurrected. But probably like that, and like The Damned was certainly like a really, really big one for me.
What did you do for The Damned, if you don't mind me asking? Was that you did t-shirt designs?
Yeah, I did. I did actually 5 t-shirt designs for The Damned.
Okay.
So one of them came through Wes, who was doing the Damned documentary. And when he was finished with that, he said, you know, we're going to be, you know, taking it on the road and everything. And I'd really like to get a shirt. Would you be interested in doing that? And I was like, yeah, of course I would. So, you know, he got the band's approval and everything, and like they apparently loved it. And I was like, my gosh, this is incredible. I'm doing stuff for The Damned. So I did that. Then I did a series of portraits of the 4 original members. And then once they announced that they were going to be doing the, you know, the original lineup shows in London, you know, I was contacted by, you know, the merch company who works for The Damned out of Mage. And they said, would you be okay with us doing shirts of each member? And I went, are you kidding me?
Yes.
I was like, yeah. So sure enough, we did that. And, you know, for me, those are huge, because like The Damned was the very first punk band I ever saw, and certainly are in my top 5 bands of all time. So, you know, to have them, you know, and then talking to Captain Sensible about my artwork, and like go, oh, it's brilliant, I love it, and just going, what? I mean, they're really responsible for me getting into, you know, the music that I'm into. So like, I mean, as far as like a really, really seminal band, for me, it doesn't get much better than that. So yeah, those have been really surreal. I don't know, you probably answer that better than me.
Could I?
I don't know. Like you were surprised by?
I don't know anymore. I mean, anymore it's just that's great.
But it is. I mean, it never loses its appeal to me, especially when it's, you know, like a band that I really like, and maybe they ask me or I ask them and they agree to something. Because I've always been, as you know, I've always been very good about, I did this, do you want to use it? Like I've already done the work.
Yeah, that's
it's
true.
Not like, would you like to work? It's like, here's something that I did. What do you think? Would you like to do? And you know, it doesn't always pan out, but I don't ever regret that. I don't ever regret working on something, you know, that got shot down. I mean, whatever. I mean, you know, I was working on some I was working on a thing for GBH that didn't work out. And then I went, all right, well, maybe Rancid wants to use it. And sure enough, they did.
Wow.
So I was like, or whatever.
That's amazing. What a Rolodex you must have.
It's pretty big. It is, you know, and it's great because like I said, I mean, I try to have like really good working relationships with whomever I'm working with, so that for them, you know, and again, it goes back to like, as an artist, who is wanting to invest their time to work with you? Because truth be told, there's a bunch of people that do work similar to what I do. Lori, not so much. But for me, there's a lot of artists that do kind of similar sort of stuff. So why have me do something? And maybe it's because, you know, like the good work experience, that I'm easy to work with, that I'm, you know, and that I feel like I have a professional manner in which I deal with things. You know, so I
well, the other thing about, I think, both of us is that we want all of the artists around us to succeed too. So like if we're in, you know, if there's a show coming up, it's trying to find, you know, well, do you want to be in the show? I'll see if we can get you in. And there's enough walls and, you know, chests around that need t-shirts and that need art, that everybody can move forward. And we're always excited to get people together and do things that are going to succeed. It's nice to have people, the more the merrier.
Oh yeah, because like for us, I mean, it's definitely about like the sense of community that should ideally exist. And like I have frequently like had people go, hey, you know, we really want you to do this or whatever, and I'll tell them, I think maybe Brian Walsby is a better fit for you. Like, here's Brian's number. Why don't you get a hold of him? And like, for me, I'm just as happy to have my friends doing work and succeeding as me, because like, I also feel like, like what goes around comes around. So if you're decent to people and you're extending opportunities to other people, well, sooner or later, it's going to happen back to you, stands to reason that it would, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a great attitude to have. And certainly what goes around comes around. The music business industry, whatever you want to call it in particular, I think is a really small, as vast and inaccessible as it seems on one end. From the other perspective, it's very insular and it's very deeply connected, and it's arguably more than anywhere else. It's about who you know and the relationships that you maintain, in some cases over many decades, and people that you think you're never going to see again, you wind up working with very closely 10 or 15 years down the line. That kind of thing is not unusual. I think, I guess I'm stating the obvious at this point.
But you're absolutely right. I mean, I was just looking at some pictures Paul Drake put up today or yesterday of at the drive-in, and they look like little kids, and I'm going, holy crap! Like they would have been, going and staying at the warehouse with you guys, and then now are like these massive people, but I'm going, they're just Sonny's buddies. Like these pictures of them hanging around at like whatever crappy apartment, Paul was staying at or whatever. And I'm just looking at them going, that connection is like, and I don't know those guys, but if I go up to Omar and I go, I'm friends with Sonny K, like suddenly it's going to be like, come on in, let's sit down, let's talk.
For sure.
Well, but you know what I mean? Like there are people that we are connected to that suddenly it opens up all these doors, and I find that, like Lori and I, when we run across people that come from more of like a punk community or whatever, I find that I have a very, very easy time working with anybody. Mm-hmm. And that could be somebody who like, oh, I like Green Day and I'm your plumber. Well, great. Now I can talk to you, and like I don't feel like you're gonna, try and dick me over or anything. But I feel like there's an unspoken connection that means we can get things done in a better fashion. And I find that is everywhere. Like anybody that I come across that kind of has that background, I feel like I can talk to them in a way. It's almost like, oh, what's on the other side of the curtain. Right. Okay, then we can talk normal.
Right. So being a Freemason or something.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. You know more about that than I would. I mean, I
don't know. No, I couldn't agree with you more. It's I had intended on asking you more about your teaching and how your punk experience, pedigree, ethics, what have you, have factored in that, but that's probably a topic for a whole other time. But I think, at least in my life, a lot of that community that we are used to, that's integral to that culture, has wound up being very useful as an adult, and has provided me with skills that I didn't really realize were skills.
Well, that's the funny thing is the old saying is life happens when when you're making other plans. Yeah, and it's true because like you said, those things that you picked up from being on tour with the VSS have informed how you deal with your work life. And that was just you having to manage on $5 a day and break it down at Jackass Acres. You don't know how to deal with that stuff until you've been through it. And then that means, well, the way that I handle other things in my regular life, I'm handling it differently. Right. And we just kind of accumulate all of these experiences that I think are really very unique in that that punk world, and has certainly like, you know, built who we are in a really interesting way.
And the horror world too.
And the horror world too. Yeah, for sure.
Kind of my people are the.
I'm sorry, you said the horror world?
Horror.
Right.
Horror. Horrors are fine too. Everybody's welcome.
So you kind of have a foot in two different doors, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different avenues, but yeah, I have a lot of horror people that that follow me. I follow them. We're, you know, and we've kind of built a relationship. It's really nice.
What's interesting too, because there's so much artwork that goes into all of that world that, you know, a lot of people don't really like, you know, think about or maybe they just take for granted, but like it's also a very small community, and super creative, and like it's exactly the same sort of community as like, and a lot of it is the same people too.
I would this might be presumptuous of me, but I would have assumed that the tactile, the physical, the vinyl itself, the kind of glitter vinyl stuff would have been, again, I might be completely delusional about this, but my presumption is that it would be very appealing to the kind of goth culture, and maybe that's more to do with maybe I'm kind of confusing that with the horror stuff like you're talking about.
You know, there's like kind of the tiki culture is very and then the goth, like the jack-o'-lantern purses that that
almost kind of like a Hot Topic,
right. Yeah. And then, you know, they're like the horror people are you know, more the ones that I do the portraits of horror movies and that sci-fi and that kind of thing. And then you know, there's the 50s kind of rockabilly. You know, there's a bunch of different things that it fits into, which is why I like it.
It's really interesting because she's got people from all walks of life, whereas, you know, like I mainly am dealing with, you know, like the punk community. She's not. I mean, she's dealing with people from all sorts of avenues that get turned on to the things that she does, because maybe she did a portrait of Pee Wee Herman, and so now somebody's going, oh, I love Pee Wee, and then they start seeing her other stuff, and then they commission her to do something.
I've done lots of portraits of grandmothers and dogs.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I love doing that stuff
in ways that like they've never looked before. Because like I think that's what's so interesting to me about Lori's work is that there isn't anything like it, you know, period. She's kind of created this own type of art really that didn't really exist. So there's not anybody that you can go, oh, her work's a lot like this. Well, it's not, you know, like, and the closest that you could get is like, it's more like, you know, like Banksy's sort of stuff than anything else, but yet completely different, you know? So I don't know. I mean, I think it's pretty cool because I think a lot of times people like in the punk world and in the horror world, when we become more adults and, you know, it's not flyers on the wall anymore. It's like, let me get something that's a little bit nicer. And then having, you know, like a really beautiful piece that Lori did of Vampira, for example. Suddenly I've got this classy place and I've legitimized my interest because I'm getting something that's being done in a really beautiful manner that elevates it instead of it just being, you know, like a page from Fangoria magazine I staple on my wall.
Which is great to you.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, it's in a sense, it's a different expression of a kind of pop art ideal where you're taking a mass-produced image or something like that, or an iconic person, and representing them in this completely unexpected way that's highly technical and highly involved. And
everything was pop art at one time. The Mona Lisa was pop art when he did it. You know?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Well, guys, I don't want to keep you all night. This has been so incredible. I know we could talk for hours.
We could. That's the funny thing is I know it's been a little over an hour, but man, it doesn't seem like it. Like,
I know, it flies right by.
I know, it does.
I got to tell you, like, one of my biggest regrets of not living in Las Vegas anymore is your annual trip out for punk rock bowling. That was a great opportunity to stay current with you, Chris, and I do miss that.
Oh, I do too. And for me, it was always like, I'll go to punk rock bowling, but I get to see Sonny too. And like, honestly, that was every bit as exciting to me as everything else that would be going on. And like, because then it was like, I can spend some real quality time with you, because like we'd go Peppermill or something, and like
my car would break down, and I'd have to wait for AAA.
And he'd always come home and show me cactus pictures and things.
Yeah.
Here's the show. But this was at Sonny's house.
Yeah, those were the days. We gotta reconvene in Vegas one of these days.
Absolutely.
Things are back to normal. I'd love to rendezvous with you there for one of those.
Oh yeah.
Always a good time. But Chris, Lori, thank you both so much for sharing the past hour with us and giving us some insight on your thoughts and your methods and just yourselves as awesome people. And man, I would love to have you back on here sometime to talk about all the stuff we haven't talked about.
Anytime.
Around.
Yeah. We're definitely around. If anybody's interested, you never know. Maybe they're not. Trust me, an hour was plenty.
Please don't have that.
Well, I wish you both continued success and look forward to seeing what pops up tomorrow and the next day on your social media.
There'll be some.
I want you to know that I at least find you both very inspiring and never less than very pleasantly surprised when things do pop up that you create, and love hearing your thoughts behind them when you share them, and just really grateful for both of you, and very pleased to have you on this program and part of this whatever it is that this series is about, showcasing. I think you guys are emblematic of it in so many ways, and I'm very grateful to you. So thank you both.
Well, thank you, Sonny. We appreciate it.
Fun.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing you both, hopefully in Stockton one of these days.
Yeah. Well, you've been out before.
Anytime.
Yeah. Due for a visit to my sister's place. So
yeah.
Home for me then. All right. Well, thanks again, both of you. Have a great rest of your evening. Thanks everyone for watching.
Bye. Love you, Sonny.
All right. Take care, buddy. Bye-bye.
See you soon. Bye-bye.